Iguodala. Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown. The three, steps back, crossover, puts up a three. Rebound James. Seconds. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Cleveland! This is for you!
Good day, Cavs fans, and welcome to a unique installment of the Block the Shot to Stop, a Cleveland Cavaliers podcast giving you anything and everything Cleveland Cavaliers talk. I'm Tim Daniel. I'm here today with my good friend from the boardroom, Ian Stonebrook. And Ian, I'm really excited to have you on because we're going to talk a little sneaker talk today about the Donovan Mitchell, the D.O.N 7. We're talking about some of the shoes that he's had in his line. But I had to reach out to you because obviously the big retail news that came out recently is that Foot Locker is now rumored to be purchased by Dick's Sporting Goods. And I thought, man, if anyone would know anything about this, it'd probably be Ian. And it's such a fascinating retail concept that's going out there now.
Oh yeah, thank you, Tim, for having me. Yeah, it's funny. I actually had to do a little return off an online purchase at Dick's Sporting Goods the day after the news broke, and I was asking the guys working the cashier line, and they hadn't heard yet, but they said we need $30 more an hour, so we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, pretty wild stuff. I mean, everybody knew Dick's Sporting Goods was really like leveling up in terms of just like overall value, their CEOs. Worth or things of that nature. And but yeah, I mean, Foot Locker has been arguably the most powerful brand in footwear for, decades. You know what I mean? Like they literally have the power to tell a Nike, an Adidas, a Jordan brand, hey, we need more leather. You know what I mean? Or we need this price point, or, yay or nay, so it will be interesting with this, big acquisition or, however it's going to go down, just how that affects everything in the whole kind of ecosystem of sneakers.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun to see how this all shakes out these next couple of months. So I brought you on today because during the postseason, the short-lived postseason for our beloved Cavs, Donovan Mitchell debuted the D.O.N 7, and it's a shoe that has a lot of really nice reaction. Mm-hmm. And obviously the relationship that with Mitchell coming to Cleveland, the relationship Adidas has built with the Cavs is pretty unique. They sell his shoe in the team shop, which I don't even know if they did that for LeBron. I don't recall it, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And, they have Adidas takeover nights at Rocket Arena for Cavs games. So with Adidas basketball kind of really stepping their game up of late, not just with, the shoe quality itself, but the branding of guys like Mitchell and Anthony Edwards. I thought that it was really kind of cool to see just kind of this rebirth, and especially Mitchell now kind of being, one of their guys, particularly like one of their big guns with him, Harden, Lillard, Edwards. So I thought Mitchell's shoe concept was something we really would have a fun conversation on.
Yeah, it's one I had no idea they sold in the team shop. That's other than the kind of like Nike Vault, like Kobe stuff at Staples and the mid aughts or whatever, I've never heard of or seen that. So that is pretty cool. And they're doing it on the right number. The 7 is, in my opinion, far and away the best shoe he's had. Adidas obviously has been doing a lot in terms of kind of revamping the aesthetics of their performance line and kind of blurring, some of the design language with, early 2000s stuff, some of their off-court stuff. I feel like it's kind of finally settling in, you know what I mean? Where there's not like this idea of almost like two Adidases, or even when they first introduced some of the new design language, if you will, with like the chapter stuff or things of that nature. It was very unclear, and I don't necessarily think intentionally so, in terms of like, is the crazy infinity like for the tunnel or is it for the court? You know what I mean? Or, things of that nature. And I think they've got it pretty well dialed in now. I'm curious for you. Do you see a lot of Dons in person in Cleveland? I'm curious to know that.
So I went up 3 times this year for games, and I saw a lot of kids wearing the Mitchell jersey with the Dons. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really cool. Anyone who knows me knows I am a Nike guy through and through. But of course, going to support my guy and support my team. So seeing that's been neat. But yeah, you're seeing a lot of kids go out and get the sneakers, especially the popular one. I was there in October for the Lakers game, and that was the week the Haribo line
Mm.
came out, the gummy bears. And literally the next day was the day the shoe came out, and they were posting in the shop that they had the box that looked like the gummy bear
Yeah.
bag and stuff like that. And they were selling them. They were getting ready to release them in the shop the next day at the team shop. So it was really cool to see that. And like you said, like I had never seen that before either. I think maybe the LeBron 15 it might have, because that was
Mm.
his year, and that shoe was so well marketed by Nike when they did the LeBron ID and stuff like that. But other than that, yeah, man, I think that's the only other time I've seen it.
Yeah, LeBron watch was probably one of the better
So cool.
yeah, marketing moments for Nike basketball. And shoot, I mean, at least last like 12 years, I'd say. Like that was kind of like the biggest splash they made post that like maybe like '09 to like 2013 run where
Yeah.
they were I mean, they could put out a shoe and say it was a Flag Day colorway, you know what I mean? And everybody buy it. So yeah, it's cool that Adidas like is investing in Don like that and doing so in Cleveland because other than obviously LeBron and Kyrie, not a lot of signature stars in Cleveland historically, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that matters a little less in today's era when things are one, so digital, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to have the local broadcast to catch somebody's highlights. And I think two with no dress code restrictions or whatever. That was, I
Yeah.
believe, one of the challenges for early LeBron Nike stuff. I mean, as much as they kind of had to put out everything in a Chicago colorway, if you will, because wine and cheese is maybe a tough look, for your everyday school shoes or hoop shoe or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's as far as the Don stuff. I think that it's finally reaching this point where it's youthful enough, but also maybe mature enough. Like a lot of the early Don stuff was almost appeared as though like it would look best in a crib size, you know what I mean? Or like a toddler, like grade school size.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad move. I mean, the dude is like super safe, super reliable. Either way, like you're probably looking at him as like the dude to fill that 110, 120 price point, on the wall and have something that is not going to be the hero for aesthetics or tech, like a Harden or an Ant shoe, but is going to have whatever is like reliable and tested, you know what I mean? And just is going to be like the no nonsense shoe.
Yeah.
7 feels like they're taking a bit more of a risk, which I like. And it looks like something that would actually look cool off court, which I don't think his line has had. Yeah, maybe somebody could have like flipped the 6s in a cool way. But yeah, it's curious to see just if this is the start of something new for him or if this ends up being a risk that doesn't pay off. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm really curious because the shoe that kind of came out, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the Kyrie 2 lows that came out when they did the
Mm.
strictly low run, and they had the sunrise colorway.
Yeah.
It's kind of what the shoe looked like, this Don 7. And that kind of really jumped out to me because it felt like I don't know if it was just paying an homage to Kyrie in Cleveland or if it was just coincidental. But I thought the shoe looked really good. Obviously, I think all of Mitchell's shoes have been under the ankle. They've been low cut.
Mhm.
And that's something where I think Adidas has really shined in, especially with Lillard and Harden shoes. It's just like they're kind of they're low cut shoes. But for him, it seems like other than Edwards, and Edwards' shoe has been really popular. I know the Ant 1 was a huge hit. I loved all the internet memes of people were wearing them with jeans. That cracked me up. But to see kind of Mitchell be on that level, like you said, it doesn't mean as much now because of things like League Pass and like the market size. But also, this is a guy who's played in Cleveland and Utah, and it's literally had a signature shoe since his rookie year, and is still marketed amongst the elite of Adidas basketball athletes.
Yeah, when he had wild timing because he caught on in the kind of fever of so and so deserves a signature shoe. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Because like if I'm 37, so my basically like formidable years as a kid was the late 90s when People knew that Mike was, maybe exiting the NBA and stuff. So there was a lot of just kind of money being thrown around, or like, maybe even low stake bets in terms of like, hey, this could be, our new, pseudo economy flight basketball shoe. Let's put Tim Hardaway's name on it. You know what I mean? This could be our big man shoe that you'd sell at Academy and maybe Foot Locker. Let's put Alonzo Mourning's name on it. So I think people were wanting that. And honestly, I think with some of the Donovan Mitchell stuff, I think it's been an interesting case study. Say Mitchell and Paul George and now Booker to some degree, in terms of like, you might want it, but there might also be a ceiling in terms of how big it can get, because I was thinking universally how, like, I haven't heard anybody say, man, Brunson needs a signature shoe. And like, he is absolutely killing it. He's in the best market there is. He's incredibly relatable. And I think some of it is just he doesn't seem to be drawn to sort of that stuff. And with him, it's probably more, you do a Kobe P, you do an Air Max with the old school NYC logo, and so there's a Foot Locker exclusive, or you do an outdoor shoe for the summer. But I think Mitchell is the guy that is, I think, kind of the modern case study for maybe just like the middle of the road best way to do it. Like,
Sure.
This guy is reliable. He's a star. He's winning dunk contests. He's putting up 40 balls in the playoffs. But maybe how that really translates is the most reliable Adidas shoe that is going to be accessible on a wall at somewhere like Dick's Sporting Goods, and is going to be the go-to for Adidas, colleges, AAU programs, high schools, things of that nature, where it's like, this is a no-nonsense, reliable basketball shoe. The irony is that they actually have a shoe that has some like twist or sizzle now. So, will that elevate it to new heights, or will that maybe be a little too much for a more conservative consumer? I don't know.
Yeah, I think you bring up great points there for sure. So let's go through and talk about the shoe particular. When you and I were texting about it, and you said here just a few minutes ago on the show, you felt like this is the best one in the line so far.
Yeah, I'll say, not even close.
Yeah, so you're betting big.
Yeah, the 6 is six second best, but yeah, this is the one.
So what is it about this sneaker? I mean, I know you play a lot of pickup basketball, obviously, but what is it about this shoe that kind of makes you love it more compared to, I don't know if love's the right word, but maybe compared to the previous shoes in his line?
I think as cliche as it sounds, is a lot of the recent Adidas stuff in terms of their like higher end signature product has evoked the feeling, again, kind of cliche or whatever, but like of that early 2000s, like T-Mac and Kobe stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
For sure, yeah.
You don't need the brand plastered on the side per se. There is like an avant-garde nature, like a flow to it, if you will. And I think this one kind of hits that. You know what I mean? Like, it has, like we said, some of the stuff that they were doing from the lifestyle range that was referencing like the Mad Handle, or, the Kobe 1, Kobe 2, stuff like that. This kind of, it's really two things. It's got a zipper, which is like, we're seeing that on the SGA shoe. You know what I mean? Like, that design language is a little bit more like 2001 to like kind of 2004, like this like slightly convertible look or stuff like that. In terms of a zipper on a low, like obviously a zipper on a mid or a high was pretty commonplace.
Yeah, think of the Gary Payton shoe.
Exactly.
Gloves,
Zoom Flight glove, 98, Flight Posit, 99 after that. But then when you think about like Answer 4 or Answer 6, you know what I mean? From the Iverson Reebok range or things like that, like it's kind of given a little bit more of that. And the other thing is gradient mesh. Gradient mesh is basically, it's kind of the new age retro version of patent leather elephant print, you know what I mean? Or like speckled sole. Like, it has that kind of Y2K aesthetic to it, and it gives something a little bit of a lifestyle feel, or like nostalgia with a twist that isn't like too on the nose, that it's just captivating, because the flip side, I don't really know how these take in the non-gradient colorways personally, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But they have a hell of a splash with the first one, so yeah, we'll see if people care, when it's really time to bomb.
Yeah, because for me too, I think about the fact that like the thing that I always jumped on, maybe this is just the market that's in my
Mhm.
mind, but with this shoe, we haven't seen it quite yet, but I feel like this is probably once the season starts in 25, 26, and the Cavs are playing again, you'll probably see the commercials again. I thought the 6 was marketed so well. Like they
Mhm.
did the commercial with the dunk where it's underneath him and it's like shows him jumping. I thought that was so well done. Wasn't as good as the Anthony Edwards commercials by any means, or having Ice-T showing up with evidence for like
Yeah.
Laker jerseys inside bags. I thought that was incredible. But for him, it seems like he's kind of like, of course, was it the second one that did the Into the Spider-Verse like collab
Mhm.
as well? And so to see him kind of get that market as a 6'1" guard, where like, obviously Curry's very comparable with the Under Armour stuff, but Curry is Under Armour, where Mitchell has to share the throne of Adidas with other people. But what the marketing for him reminds me of, especially things like the 7 and the Harbo, is Kyrie. And not just maybe, like I said, maybe it's just the market. But you remember probably really well just from where you work. But like when the Kyrie 2 Krispy Kremes came out
Mhm.
with the donut box sneaker, that's what the Harbo gummy bears reminded me of the most. And maybe it's just the fact that it had the window in the box, or maybe it's just the fact that, it's 2 Cleveland guards who are taking over the world and I have a chance to be first team All NBA. But I felt like that's the thing that just elevated me so much. And I jumped right to when I thought of the Donovan Mitchell shoe.
Yeah, I mean, Kyrie's low key the blueprint for a lot, lot of. I mean, he's a blueprint for the Lamelo Puma stuff. You know what I mean?
For
Like,
sure.
he's definitely. There's traces of him in the Don stuff. As you said. Just in terms of basically like accessible price point. Um, and with or because of that tech, that's not like, I'm 6 years old. How the hell do I get my foot in this? You know what I mean? And then storytelling and marketing through basically collabs and colorways that are like super youth centric. You know what I mean? So I think the only difference is like Kyrie and LaMelo are playing towards that Foot Locker consumer,
For sure.
and the
Yes.
Donovan stuff's a little bit more towards like Dick's Sporting Goods. So like it's a little quieter, a little bit more conservative, kind of a la the Paul George stuff. And
See a
I mean,
lot of Adidas at AAU camps and
yeah, exactly. And it's like, I'll say this, like if you see somebody that's like really hooping and hooping in Adidas, like they probably are wearing the down shoe. Like I was looking at kick stats this morning. There was the most worn Adidas shoe. The 6 was in terms of NBA minutes this year. You watch the NCAA tournament, you might see 1 or 2 guys on a team in the Hardens, you know what I mean? You probably don't see the Ants that much because they're a dope shoe, but not super good to a lot of people in terms of playing, and just because the fit's a little roomy per se, or a little
Mhm.
the last might not be everybody's favorite. And the Fear of God stuff didn't necessarily penetrate like that. So you're basically left with Don and Dame, who've had just like consistent playable shoes for a while. And I mean, if you're really playing and there's real stakes,
Yeah.
you want that as much as anything else. It might not make the splash, you know what I mean, or it might not have the sizzle of some of the other stuff, but there's a lot of people buying shoes at Dick's Sporting Goods Academy, and Foot Locker obviously to a degree too. So to have something that fulfills that market, especially when you have a star playing in a mid-sized market, I think is there's some synergy there.
Let's talk a little bit about the mid-sized market here
Mhm.
because Evan Mobley is also an Adidas athlete. Actually, funny enough, Jared Allen is still wearing Kyrie threes. So,
Yep, saw
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So Evan Mobley's in Adidas market, and he's coming off of obviously the year he took that next step basketball wise. He was his first time All Star. He was Defensive Player of the Year. And Adidas doesn't really necessarily. I'm not saying Evan Mobley deserves a signature shoe by any means. He's probably not the most marketable athlete by any means.
Mhm.
I feel like he's a guy Adidas could maybe do more with now because he had this elevation this year, and they really don't have a big on the roster that they can kind of put behind. He's a California kid. He
Mhm.
played for the Compton Magic. He went to USC. Obviously, USC's a Nike school, but I feel like is he a guy you could kind of see maybe Adidas will probably invest a little more time in now that he's kind of taken that next step?
I think maybe on a grassroots level, I think like the thing you said about Compton Magic is compelling and stuff like that, and like seems like a good dude. Obviously has a brother who plays, too. So like, there's definitely like a family value story. You know what I mean? And like again, kind of like hitting a similar, or adjacent market to Don. But I really think that that the big brands, I mean, the same as like the analogy I make is, all right, like obviously with the NBA in the second apron, like, you basically get 2 superstars. That's it. You know what I mean? Like there's no budget for super teams. That's it. Even when we see like ESPN divesting of talent, like, we'd rather put all our money in Stephen A. Smith and
For
Scott
sure.
Van Pelt, and everybody else just be happy to be on the platform. You know what I mean? And I think we're going to see the same stuff with signature shoes, not just signature shoes, but just like brand deals in general. You know what I mean? I think that if you're a brand, you would rather take a small long tail bet on an NIL kid in high school and college that is going to have eyeballs and attention to the youth is going to be cheaper than being like, hey, we're going to, like, I don't think we'll ever see like Adidas Believe in 5 again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that I don't think we're going to see even the same, so-and-so's rookie draft class. You might, you know what I mean? Actually, I take that back. You will, but it's not going to be with the money that used to be on it. You know what I mean?
For
Like, the
sure.
fact of the matter is, more or less, it's usually 2 or 3 guys in this era, 2 or 3 girls more so even, that are kind of selling all the shoes. And I think that is going to make kind of some of the more stars of, slightly lesser, level or valor, if you will, either just say, hey, that's not a revenue stream for me no more. You know what I mean? Or, maybe I'll try to white label something, you know what I mean? And make my own thing. But yeah, I think things are going to look a little bit more like they did late 80s, early 90s, per se, than some of the booms and breadth of, I mean, the ironic flip to that, and sorry for babbling, is like
No,
with
that's what
the
I asked you for.
with the advent of the Asian brands, like, yes, you do have 20 some WNBA and NBA like signature stars now, but as far as like this real footprint that you can feel like with marketing on TV, with, you know, activations in malls or arenas or things like that, I really just only think it's going to be a few folks that really make noise.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Like I look at even like Darius Garland. So Darius Garland, 2-time All-Star. I know obviously there's a lot of conversation. Will he be a Cavalier next year? In my honest opinion, I think he will be. But New Balance athlete and a guy that was rumored to have a New Balance signature shoe coming at some point for his elevation and what he's been able to do. But New Balance also just signed Cooper Flag. Well, didn't just sign him,
Right.
Yeah. But so now it's like for Darius Garland, more than likely he probably takes a hit there, not just because of the postseason, but they just signed the guy who's about to be the number 1 pick in the draft to a big market like Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Garland is probably, I mean, one, I really like him and I really like his game.
Me too.
I think that you're probably just going to see New Balance like basically have 1 or 2 like marquee guard shoes a year that they'll align Garland, Maxey, Jamal Murray, around and stuff like that. Cooper Flag probably takes that Kawhi spot.
I would think so, yeah.
I would think so too. But even then, they might kind of slow roll that. I'm not sure. It seems like as much as brands are keen on grabbing like potential stars in in high school or college, like other than what Puma did with Scoot, which unfortunately probably hasn't, yielded the dividends they were hoping for at retail, even though I like him and I think his shoe's been cool.
Me too.
Yeah, I think folks are slow rolling it. You know what I mean? And there is definitely also like an optics and perception thing that most brands want to be, I guess, as safe as possible. You know what I mean? Even if it costs them some money or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think if Coop pops, why would you not just make whatever the next marquee New Balance basketball shoe is going to be his shoe,
Yeah,
but
100%.
I think that brands are a little too afraid of athletes and agents to do that anymore. Right or wrong. I just think that's what it is.
I love that we're seeing these brands like New Balance come up, and you mentioned Scoot with Puma. They're probably about to make all that back when Tyrese Halliburton's signature shoes comes out next year. So,
man, I don't know. I hope so. I like Hallie, but I think that I think selling a signature shoe is really hard. You know what I
it
mean?
is. Yeah.
I think as a brand, you have to be able to discern the noise or the chatter or demand versus the actual sell-through. You know what I mean? And it is such an upside down flip thing because like Paul George, Donovan Mitchell, those guys have had in my mind, sustaining signature businesses, but almost in some ways because of lack of personality per se. Even though both those guys are like cool dudes and like
For
obviously,
sure, yeah.
they're doing stuff or like that, but you're not saying a lot if you're buying their shoe. You know what I mean? Like I always, the analogy of like the guy at the gym that like maybe doesn't want to show up in LeBrons or Jordans. People like, oh, you think you're LeBron, like which is often not the case. It's maybe the case if you're 12 years old, but
Right.
I think that yeah, I'm curious to see what Puma does because like they hit the jackpot with LaMelo. They did everything right, but I think you either have to be super polarizing or super safe. And the polarizing guys like Ja, like LaMelo, like Ant, who are going to go is viral for highlights just as much for like clips or memes or things they said in interviews is one side of the coin. And then the other side of the coin is, this guy's going to play 82 games a year, is never going to get in no trouble. It's $110. I'm not saying too much about myself by buying it or wearing it. And where Halliburton falls into that equation, I'm not sure. I love
Yeah.
his game. I'm always here for a pass first point guard. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Well, I'll say this too. It's tough when in the biggest market in the entire US ain't nobody gonna buy it. And that's not to shot, that's not a shot at him. It's
For
just
sure.
just like you probably weren't gonna sell purple and gold Converse weapons, in 85 in Boston or black and white in LA, at that time or whatever. So there is an interesting thing with you know, I guess probably the closest comp is what Adidas had with Trey. You know what I mean? Like there's something to be about a villain who doesn't scare and has like a game with some flavor, but like, is it enough? I don't know. The shoe's got to be super sick, I think, to cross over, but we'll see. I like them. I like them a lot.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, I'll get you out of here because I know you talk sneakers your whole day. It's your job, obviously. So, and I know you love hoops just as much as we do. So, I'll ask you this about the Cavs before we get you out of here. What do you think? Do you think this is a team that runs it back next year? Do you think if they do run it back, that they've hit their ceiling, or do you think with an open East next year with the Tatum injury and the Dame injury, maybe they can make one last run at it?
Yeah, I think they run it back. I guess the question I'd ask, because I'm honestly not sure, is who's their GM?
Kobe Altman.
Okay. I know that, yeah, I know the name. I don't know too much about him. Like you said, I mean, it's whether or not they say, hey, we're gonna roll the dice and trade him a Mobley or Garland. You know what I mean? Which I don't really know that they should. I think they have a good team. And yeah, like you said, the East is pretty vulnerable. You know what I mean? Like you got to think as much as they shat the bed, this past round and obviously had health issues and things like that. They got to be thinking, man, if we just showed up, we could be in the NBA Finals. Like,
That's how we feel. Yeah.
yeah, and as you should, you know what I mean? And like, somebody who grew up watching the Pistons, like obviously a very different NBA, you know what I mean? And granted, like they did make big swing trades in terms of like Stackhouse for Rip, picking up Rasheed Wallace at the deadline and things like that, always, lining their bench with, the Eldon Campbells of the world who could, throw 5 fouls at Shaq. So like I don't know what that looks like for Cleveland, and I don't know what that looks like in this era of like basically a hard cap. But I do know that like Detroit in the early 2000s, or even like Boston these last few years, you make it to the Eastern Conference Finals about 4 times, and then you finally come through. You know what I mean? So I don't really see why Cleveland wouldn't do that, and also really what other options they have. And I think that I'm sure it feels different being in there, but it's like I don't think you beat Cleveland to appease the desires of the league at whole or a national fan base. You say, hey, these are our guys. We know what we can get. We know what we can't. And we're just going to try to run this back and make it as far as it'll take us. You know what I mean? Like think the Hunter trade was a really good move. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, like I said, like sometimes stuff just don't work out. You know what I mean? And like, health isn't on your side, or you catch a buzzsaw in terms of, you know, Halliburton and Matherin, and those, all those guys on the Pacers just on a absolute heater. But nah, yeah, I think you're running back. And like I said, partly just because I really don't know what else he'd do. You know what I mean? I don't know. I haven't dug deep enough, but I don't know that there's another move out there that shakes it up or changes the spacing. And you never really know what you're building towards either, too, because you would have said, yo, we got to load up on big wings because we got to get through Boston. You know what I mean? And it's like Boston, sadly, probably ain't going to be Boston for another 15 months. You know what I mean? You never know.
Right.
So like, that's not the thing. Or, we need backup depth in the paint because we're going to see Giannis and Embiid. That might not be the case either. You know what I mean? So,
Especially Embiid, yeah.
you kind of just got to double down on who you are and what you got there, and hope that translates. So yeah, I know it sucks right now and it's a tough pill to swallow, but you got to think there's still top 3 in the East coming in next year.
Yeah, I would think so.
Barring something crazy don't happen. But yeah, that's my thought. But yeah, we'll see. At the same time too, I like chaos. You know what I mean? It's fun to see everybody move around. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ian, before we get you out of here, man, thank you again. You're always gracious with your time with me. I really appreciate it. Anything that we should be looking at that you got coming up on the boardroom that you're excited about?
Yeah, we got our Spike Lee cover story coming I believe today. Yeah, shout out Rich and Damien on that, and obviously our video team. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I've heard teasers of what's going to be in it. So yeah, I'd say if you're a hoops fan, you'll get some good Knicks talk in it, some good Michael Jordan stories, I think some Mark Jackson stories, stuff like that. So very excited to read and watch that.
Perfect, man. I'm looking forward to it. Ian, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it, dude. This has been really cool. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up, Cavs fans. Thank you so much for hanging out and listening to us talk a little sneakers today. And we'll be back next week. As always, go Cavs.
Later.